Last time on the Skip and Josh podcast.
I decided to take out a pad and a pen, and I wrote down, I made my list of my most annoying or the most annoying people that I work with. I made a list. I just wrote it down.
It's very therapeutic to make a list like that.
Oh, I felt great after making the list, but I didn't stop at 7 like we normally do. I had to go all the way to 10 because there were so many.
You're listening to the Skip and Josh podcast with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
Okay, Skip, so today we're going to talk about our favorite Canadian baseball players. But before we get to that, you know how I like to start every episode with a funny story or an interesting story or just something that I want to get off my chest. So we were actually supposed to record yesterday morning, but we delayed it to today. And it's a good thing that we delayed it to today because I had something all planned for the beginning of the episode, but then something happened yesterday which usurped that.
Usurp. I love the vocabulary. You're digging deep in your vocabulary bag for that one.
Exactly. So I know that you don't really follow baseball. At least I don't think you've been following baseball this year. Have you?
No. But the funniest thing is that before we push record, the one thing I always ask you, it's like we've been doing this for 5 years. It's always the same conversation. Do you know, Josh, do you know how you're going to start the episode? And then you're like, yeah, I have an idea, or no, I'm not sure. And today you're like, yeah, I know what I'm going to start with. And I said, I think I know what you're going to start with, but I'm not going to say it. I want to see if I'm right. So continue, because I think I was on the right track.
Yes, you must know what I'm going to talk about. Have you heard about this incident between Jock Peterson and Tommy Pham?
That's exactly it.
Let's hold on. Before you even say anything, we have to assume that the listeners don't know the story, so we have to tell them
go
the
ahead.
story.
Tell the story. Yeah.
And before I even tell the story, you may recall that 2 years ago, I lashed out at Tommy Pham on this very show. I don't remember what it was about, but he did something completely idiotic 2 years ago, and I said, what kind of an idiot is this guy? Well, now, Tommy Pham has outdone himself. He's an even bigger idiot than I thought, which I didn't even think was possible. So now I'll tell the story of what happened, and then you can comment on it. Mm-hmm. So Tommy Pham and Jock Peterson have never met each other. They only know each other because they both play Major League Baseball. And if you've ever been to a baseball game, about an hour before the game, it's very common that both teams are on the field at the same time and they're stretching or running or loosening up or doing whatever. And sometimes players from opposing teams will talk to each other because maybe they went to school together or who knows what, or they used to play on the same team.
Right. And Pham is on the Reds, right? And Jock Peterson's on the Giants.
Correct. Yeah? Yes.
Yeah.
And they're playing each other this weekend. So Peterson was in the outfield, warming up, stretching, and Pham went up to him because they both participated in the same fantasy football league last year. That's the only way they know each other. They've never met in person. I don't think they've ever spoken. So Pham accused Peterson of cheating in the fantasy football league. Apparently, Peterson had an injured guy. He put him on the injured list, and then he picked up a player from the pile without dropping anybody, which is completely legit for anyone who's ever played any fantasy sports. So when Pham accused him of cheating, Peterson was like, what are you talking about? You did exactly the same thing with one of your injured players. And then Pham slaps Peterson in the face.
And boom goes the dynamite.
Which is like, are you 5 years old? And so I'm happy to report that Major League Baseball has suspended Pham for 3 games for this. I'm very happy about that. They spoke to both the players after the game, and you can go Google the YouTube interview if you want. But I don't know what's wrong with this Tommy Pham guy. I just don't know.
It's funny because did you see the clip of the slap?
I did, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it it's from far away and whatever. Right. But then I saw the whole interview with Jock Peterson after. Now, let me get one thing straight. I don't think Jock Peterson is a good guy at all. I think he's also an idiot. But in this case, he's telling the story about the fantasy football and the injury reserve spot, and he's completely calm about it. And I don't think that's how the conversation went in the outfield. There was probably a lot of swear words going back and forth between them and whatnot. But it's just so wild that this is it. You get suspended 3 games because of fantasy football. But like you said, there's no way he could even do something illegal. The platform that they're on, and Jock Peterson said it was an ESPN league. He said it in an interview. The platform that you're on will dictate what you can and cannot do. So if the guy doesn't have out next to his name or injured, whatever the case is, you can't put him in the injured reserve spot. They won't let you do that.
Exactly.
Like the machine itself, the programming, you can't do it.
So it's
the
impossible to
fact-
cheat.
Like what he's accusing him of, it makes no sense whatsoever. You know, like it's
So anyway, enough of that. Do we have any listener mail?
Mailbag.
got some mailbag. We last episode we did our favorite players that played their entire career with one team, and our big super fan Derek, he gave us his list of his favorite one team players, and it had a lot of the same players as us: Tony Gwynn, Kirby Puckett, Ken Dryden. But he did have some that we didn't talk about. Jim Kelly was a good one that he brought up.
Oh, of course, yes.
Steve Yzerman and Mike Schmidt. And then the one that he really mentioned that actually I consider maybe this guy could maybe bump one of my 7 is Edgar Martinez.
Oh, yes, DH.
DH. Yeah. So, I mean, I thought he had a pretty good list.
I considered Steve Yzerman instead of Derek Jeter.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Our good buddy Jesse out in Texas sent us a list. It was a completely Dallas list. Like, it was Dallas. Roger Staubach, Troy Aikman, Dirk Nowitzki, Rusty Greer, Texas Ranger legend, Darryl Johnson, Bill Bates, Cowboy legend, and then Johnny Bench. Just Johnny Bench, nothing related to Dallas, but just Johnny Bench. So
okay,
I thought that was
good
pretty
stuff.
amusing. And then completely unrelated to any episode, but more of a I got a text from Mark, our friend Mark in Philadelphia. He had a What Bugs Me of his own.
And what bugs Mark?
Like how often, I guess your What Bugs Me's are wearing off on the general public now, Josh.
Well, there's a lot of things bugging a lot of people.
It's actually it is apropos because we talked last time about like streaming music services, and you mentioned Stingray, and we talk often about Spotify or Apple Music. So I don't know which service he subscribes to, but he basically sent me a screenshot, and he says it was like Led Zeppelin, Whole Lotta Love, but it was like 1990 remaster. So he's like, how does Led Zeppelin end up in a 90s rock playlist? Like,
That's a very good
What
question.
Bugs Me.
That is a very good question.
And that's a legit What Bugs Me,
Agreed, because there are people who are younger than us who are going to think that the song came out in 1990.
Exactly. You sit down and you're ready to listen to, Everclear and maybe Weezer.
Silverchair.
Yeah, exactly. Any kind of 90s rock, and then all of a sudden you have Led Zeppelin. It doesn't really make sense. So thank you, everybody, for those messages and emails.
Love it, Mark.
So, Josh, your topic, you said you wanted to talk about your favorite Canadian baseball players.
Yes. So after we agreed on this topic, I realized that, well, obviously there aren't very many to choose from, which is part of the reason why I picked it. But also I'm like, I think we're going to have 4 or 5 the same, if not all 7.
Well, we're going to have a lot the same. I mean, I tried to like pick players that like actually had like some kind of career, right? Like otherwise it's just like, you don't want to just pick like for example, Rob Ducey didn't end up on my list. Maybe he ended up on yours.
Not on mine.
But like they had to be a player of some kind of consequence,
For sure, yes. And all these players are some kind of consequence. That was the only hard part for me, actually, ranking them. Finding 7 was easy. Ranking them was the only hard part. And I think we're going to have the same number 1, but we'll get to that.
I do agree that we're probably going to have a lot of the same. I tried to strike the balance between like players who had very strong and long careers in the major leagues, but also players that I really liked, So there's some good players that had good careers that I just didn't include on my list, and I had reasons why, like I just didn't like them. Or there's one guy that was maybe in your list that I just refused to put in my list because I don't like him.
I think I know who you're referring to.
Oh, maybe. Other than that, I think we will have a lot the same. There's only 2 Canadians in the Hall of Fame, right? So I don't know if we'll reveal that as we go, and I don't know if both made your list, but we'll see.
Okay. Well, part of my criteria is I wanted to have seen them play.
Yeah.
Like, not in person, but I mean, I wanted them to have played while I was watching baseball.
Right. So the only 2 Canadians in the Hall of Fame is Larry Walker, who I'm assuming is in your list.
Right.
And the other is Ferguson Jenkins, who I'm assuming is not in your list based
Correct.
on what you just said.
That is
right?
correct.
So, yeah. Okay, so do you want me to go first or you
Well,
go
no,
first?
it's my
How
topic,
do you-
so I have to go first.
Yeah, go ahead.
Number 7.
Okay, so number 7 for me, and I think this is the guy who you refuse to put on your list, is Joey Votto. Maybe
He's
I'm
not
wrong.
on my list.
He is.
No,
on
you're 100% right. He's in my honorable mentions. I don't like the guy.
Okay. So anyway, I put him here for a few reasons. He's a 6-time All-Star. He's won a Gold Glove. He won the MVP in 2010. Interesting. He's played his entire career with one team, so he could have been in our previous episode as well,
It's true.
but he wasn't, for me at least. Played his entire career with Cincinnati. 333 home runs. He's still active, obviously, by the way. He has a career batting average of 300, which is in jeopardy because right now he's hitting below 200 this season. So that career 300 batting average is, it's very precarious at the moment. But Joey Votto is number 7 on my list.
He's obviously a great player, played his whole career. He's more, I mean, he's a guy, his batting average, like, is, he doesn't care about batting average. This guy, all he does is walk. He's like, this guy's the master of taking walks, but drawing walks. But yeah, I mean, he could have made my list, but if he would have been 8, I would have had him as 8, I guess. Yeah.
Okay.
So number 7 for me is an active player. Well, not the only one, but one of the few. And the only Blue Jay on my list. Well, sort of. And that's Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
Very nice.
And a lot of people don't realize that he is a Canadian. He was born in Montreal when his father was playing for the Expos, although I don't think he doesn't speak English or French. He only speaks
That is correct.
because he grew up his whole life in the Dominican. I mean, for me, it's difficult to include Jays. I'm not a Jays guy, but Vlad is like must-see TV, you know? Like, he had 48 home runs last year. He's only in his 4th season. He could have, if it wasn't for Shohei Ohtani last year with some kind of ridiculous season, Vlad would have won the MVP in any other year easily.
Right.
He's not doing great this year, and the Jays are doing okay. But I mean, he's gonna have an amazing career. The guy, the guy's a hitter. I mean, what are you gonna say? The guy can hit. No matter what position he ends up in, maybe he's gonna end up as being a DH. I don't know. He's gonna hit. Like, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I agree.
Number 6.
Next for me is Justin Morneau. So he played most of his career with Minnesota. He won the MVP in 2006 with the Twins. He was a 4-time All-Star, and he won the batting title actually in 2014 with Colorado. He's had 2 Silver Sluggers as well. Now, this is an interesting stat about him. I don't know if it's really a stat or a note, but in 2008, he somehow played in 163 games. Considering there's only supposed to be 162 games in a season, it's quite interesting.
It is possible, and that has happened in other sports where players have played more than the max. It's because they get traded, and then they end up playing all their games for the other team too, or whatever the circumstances.
I don't think he was traded that year. I think he played all those games with the same team. I think it's because there was a game that got postponed or whatever. It started to rain, and they canceled the game. So the game didn't count in the standings, but the stats counted for the players. Which
That
I don't
is very
understand why
possible.
baseball does that. I still don't understand that.
I don't know either. So 6 for me is also Justin Morneau. I really liked this player when he came up with the Twins. I have a soft spot on my brain for the Twins, and all of a sudden they had this Canadian slugger. He won the MVP award. They looked like contenders again, although the Twins have never really been. I just really, really like this guy as a player. Now, when researching about Justin Morneau, Josh, there's this weird little thing in Wikipedia. It says he's very superstitious. He for much of his career he wore number 33 to honor his idol, former NHL goalie Patrick Roy.
Mm-hmm. I think that's why Larry Walker wore 33 as well.
Maybe. And then he says, as a young player, he would refuse to leave his car for hockey games until the clock read 33 minutes past the half hour.
That could make you late for games sometimes.
Yeah, and if you go on Wikipedia, the paragraph continues. They talk about all these weird superstitions he had as a pro. Like, I mean, baseball players, I think, for the most part, are superstitious. So,
yes.
Anyway, so yeah, I have the same number 6 as you, which is kind of cool. We kind of knew that. And I bet you we might have the same number 5. But
I forgot to mention he had 247 career homers and a career batting average of 281.
Very nice.
Number 5.
So then next for me is Jason Bay. Now, I don't know if you know this, but Jason Bay went to Gonzaga, by the way, And in 2000, he was actually drafted by the Expos. Never played a game for them, though. He won the Rookie of the Year in 2004 with the Pittsburgh Pirates. He has 1 Silver Slugger, and he was a 3-time All-Star. 222 career home runs and a career batting average of 266.
He was always a good player. This is a guy that had a couple of really great years for the Pirates, and then he cashed in, made a huge contract to go to the Red Sox, never really did anything for the Red Sox. He wasn't really good. And then he kind of became good again after he left the Red Sox. He was a pretty good player, I guess. Yeah. So number 5 for me is Russell Martin. This is like maybe quintessential Canadian player, born in Toronto, grew up in Montreal, 4-time All-Star. He was an All-Star for 3 different teams, the Dodgers, the Jays, and the Yankees, which says a lot about him. He's a very proud Canadian. That was part of my criteria for getting up higher in the list, my list. He's a very proud Canadian. You'd remember like the whole story, like he wanted to play for Team Canada, wanted him to play in the World Baseball Classic. And it was sort of like towards the end of his career, and he was like, yeah, I'll play. He goes, but I want to play shortstop. I was like, what? What is he talking about? And I remember we went to Chicago on that trip. I forget what year it was. And Russell, he was on the Yankees, and we were watching the Yankees take batting practice. And he was playing shortstop in the warm-ups because I think he just likes to have fun. He's like really like a ball player. He's like an adult playing a kid's game, but he acts like a kid, like he should,
Because, every Major League Baseball player, when they were in high school, they played shortstop and they pitched.
That's right.
So they can all do it, and they all think they can still do it.
Right, exactly.
Number 4.
Next for me is Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who you mentioned earlier. So, yes, he was born in Montreal in 1999, and this is only his 4th season in Major League Baseball, as you said. He's already won the MVP at an All-Star game, and he has a Silver Slugger. Again, he's still active, so he's got 81 career homers and a career batting average of 285. But as you said, he has a very bright future, and it might end up as a designated hitter, but certainly exciting to watch Vladimir Guerrero every time he comes up to bat. Not as fast a runner as his dad, and not as good an arm as his dad, but can crush the ball, certainly.
I'm just worried with him, like how fat he's going to get. That's my concern.
I know. I don't understand. You would think he'd be in better shape.
Like he's really not in great shape now.
I guess his parents and his grandparents just fed him too much.
Well, that's what all the stories are, that he grew up mostly with his grandmother and, whatever. So number 4 for me, Josh, the pride of Melville, Saskatchewan, and one of the first Canadian baseball players that I ever knew of, and that's Terry Poole. Remember this guy?
Of course. I considered him for my list.
He's in the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame, and he's in the Houston Astros Hall of Fame. Even though he was he was a 1-time All-Star, I think in 1978. But when I first started discovering baseball, it was 79, 80, 81, 82. That's when I was really learning about the game and really diving into stats and just investing all my time reading box scores. And then I found out that Terry Poole was Canadian. I was like, oh my God, look at this guy. And he was always he wasn't a great player, but he was kind of like the classic number 2 hitter. He always hit 280, 10 home runs, 15 stolen bases, good outfielder. And the Astros were always a fun team in those days, with all their great pitchers and kind of scrappy hitters. So that's Terry Poole.
And the Astros had a nice uniform too back then.
Oh yeah, they had what is it called, the sunset or the rainbow,
Yeah, I don't know what they call it, but it was really nice.
Number 3.
Okay, so next for me is Eric Gagne. So he was born in Montreal in 1976, and he went to Edouard Montpetit High School in Montreal. In 2003, he led the league in saves with 55, and he won the Cy Young Award that year, which is a big deal because relievers don't usually win the Cy Young Award.
You have to be really dominant to do that. Yeah.
Right. He was, because he actually had 0 blown saves. He also, and I don't think this award is given out anymore, but he won the Rolaids Reliever of the Year twice. I don't think they give that out anymore.
I'm not sure.
Anyway.
This is the guy, Josh, that I deliberately left off my list. I don't care for him.
That's fine.
I think he's a big cheater. Like,
Well, he did
was
use
involved in-
performance-enhancing drugs, yes. He was a 3-time All-Star. He won the World Series in 2007. I think he's the only World Series winner on my list.
It's possible.
And I didn't know this about him, but for his first 3 seasons in professional baseball in the majors, he was a starting pitcher, actually. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Ended up with 187 career saves, and he had more strikeouts than innings pitched, which is, as a pitcher, that's what you want.
Yeah. He was definitely the most dominant relief pitcher in the league for at least 2 years, maybe possibly 3. Like, he had like those 2 or 3 seasons that he had in a row are like, it's ridiculous. But then he faded away just as fast as he jumped on the scene, right?
Right.
Like he
Also, every year in Canada, they give out the Canadian Athlete of the Year award in December.
Right.
And he actually didn't, he was up for the award that year that he won the Cy Young, but he didn't win it because Mike Weir won it that year because Mike Weir won, I think, the Masters that year. Now,
He did, yeah.
you know how I feel about golf, first of all, but
We're not even supposed to be talking about golf.
Right,
Like, you're
but-
breaking our own rules right now.
no, but I'm not going to talk about golf. I'm just going to say that if I had to pick, if I was voting for the Canadian Athlete of the Year that year, I would have picked Eric Gagne because he had a full great season, whereas Mike Weir had a great weekend. Now, granted,
no,
the
but-
Masters is a huge tournament. I get it. I know all the golf fans are going to like yell at me and whatever, but it was one great weekend, whereas Gagne had a full season of greatness. Anyway, that's it. I just want to get that off my chest.
Good stuff. So I'm on number 3. You mentioned that Gagne might be the only World Series winner on your team, but I have on my list number 3 Freddie Freeman. You don't have him on your list at all?
You know what? I didn't even consider him. Was he born in Canada?
No. So he's number 3 on my list. He's born in California.
Okay, that's
But
probably
both his
why I didn't
parents
consider him.
Yeah, both his parents are from Ontario. You know Freddie Freeman's story, right? His mom died when he was 10. It's
Yes.
really quite a sad story. But the reason why I included him and he made a point of he plays for Canada in international tournaments.
This is true.
There's not a lot of international baseball tournaments, but at the World Baseball Classic, he decided I'm going to play for Canada, and he did. So, I mean, I don't know if he considers himself Canadian or not, but he certainly is proud of his Canadian heritage, which for me, that counts good enough. And I mean, look, the guy was the NL MVP once. He's on the Dodgers now. I think Braves fans were just in shock when they let him go. Like, this guy was the face of the Braves. Like, this is like, it was really shocking to me that he became a Dodger.
Even though he's having a good season, I think letting him go was the right thing to do because A, they would have had to overpay him and also give him way too many years. And B, they won the World Series. Like, they're probably not going to win the World Series again for at least 10 years. So you might as well start rebuilding the day after you win the World Series. Because nobody repeats anymore these days.
Good organizations are not afraid to make the hard decisions. I know you don't like Bill Belichick, but that's his specialty. Mm-hmm. Bill Belichick, if you are you're getting like one day too old for him and he thinks you're making $1 too much, you're gone, that's how the Patriots stayed relevant all those years. So anyways, we'll see how the Braves do. They still have a great young core. They're building around Acuna, obviously other players, anyways, but Freddie Freeman's number 3 for me.
Okay.
We're in
Nice
the top
pick.
2 now. It's exciting, no?
Yes,
I know we have the same number 1. We definitely have the same number 1.
Number 2.
So number 2 for me, you already mentioned him. It's Russell Martin. By the way, I just found out he just retired yesterday.
Really?
Yeah, like officially
Yesterday?
he just retired yesterday, which is another good reason why we didn't record yesterday. So
I mean, I just assumed he retired like 5 years ago.
so did I, but there was a news story where he just retired yesterday. So he was born in Toronto, but he grew up in Montreal. He went to the same high school as Eric Gagne, by the way.
Right. When you said the name of the school, I was like, hey, in my research, that sounds familiar for Russell Martin.
They went to the same high school. And you know how I said Jason Bay was drafted by the Expos in 2000? Well, Russell Martin was drafted by the Expos in 2000. And then he was drafted again 2 years later by the Dodgers.
Right.
So he was a 4-time All-Star, 1 Gold Glove, 1 Silver Slugger, 191 career homers. Any offensive numbers you get from a catcher are just icing on the cake.
Yeah. He was a complete player. He was a good offensive catcher and a good defensive catcher, which is a rare combination.
His career batting average was 248. This is the stat that impressed me the most. He's a catcher. They are in their knees are in pain every day of the year.
He could run a little.
He stole 101 bases, this guy. Like, what catcher steals 100 bases?
Because he's like a gamer. Like, I feel like out of all those stolen bases, probably 90 of them were like when the pitcher wasn't looking and the catcher wasn't paying attention or they weren't holding him and stuff like this, you know?
So who knows? Yeah.
So I'm at number 2.
Yes.
This guy didn't make your list. I'm really surprised. 265 home runs in the major leagues, Josh. He played for 19 seasons.
I don't know who it is.
So, you know, like when you play softball, me and you played softball, but like in the beer leagues when guys are like 35 years old and they're playing softball and you have some fat first baseman that's just smashing homers and then goes to the dugout and he chugs 3 beers and then he goes out there and he hits 3 more homers. That's Matt Stairs.
Oh, I should have guessed.
Right?
Yeah.
So he's born in St. John, New Brunswick. Like I said, he played 19 seasons in the league. And the guy was just like this I don't want to say fat, but he didn't look like didn't have an athlete's body.
No, he didn't.
Somehow he stuck around year after year, and like eventually he found his mark in Oakland where he had a few really good seasons. And he has like a really interesting record. He has the major league record for pinch hit home runs. 23 pinch hit home runs, which
That's
is
not
a crazy
easy to
impressive.
do.
No, that's not easy to do at all. At all. It's crazy. So, I mean, that's Matt Stairs. You know, he had a brief time he broke in with on the Expos, right? And there was always like this, I don't know if he broke in, but he did, maybe I'm getting the timeline wrong, but he always seemed like he had a lot of potential, but I think his niche was more of a part-time player, pinch hitter, you know, like, and that's what it was, you know, so.
Like a poor man's Wallace Johnson.
Yeah, well, no, he had much more power than Wallace Johnson.
Right.
Number 1.
Okay, so I'm at number 1, and it's not going to be any surprise to you. This is the most decorated player on my list by far. It's Larry Walker. So he's in the Hall of Fame. He obviously played for the Expos, so he was definitely going to be number 1 on my list. He's got 7 Gold Gloves, 3 Silver Sluggers, 3 batting titles, and he's a 5-time All-Star. Now, he won his 1 MVP in 1997 with Colorado. Career numbers, 383 home runs, a .313 career batting average, and he also stole 230 bases. So my favorite thing about Larry Walker is we share the same birthday, December 1st. Not the same year, but the same date.
Look, Larry Walker's number 1 on my list. Obviously, when you told me the category and we decided on the category of favorite Canadian baseball players, it was not going to be any surprise that Larry Walker was number 1 for you, number 1 for me. Ex-Expo. I mean, look, he was the best player on the night. We talk a lot about the 1994 Expo team that should have won the World Series had there not been a strike. He was the best hitter on that team. He was the leader of that team. He really became a superstar on the Rockies. Like you say, you mentioned he won the MVP, and like his stats in '97 are obscene. Like they are absolutely obscene, and they people ignore them because he played on Colorado, and people just work under the assumption that the numbers are inflated because of the field he played at. And yes, that's true, but they're still crazy numbers, you know. And you mentioned there's 3 stories I want to talk about Larry Walker. So you mentioned that. You mentioned like the Lou Marsh Award, the Canadian Athlete of the Year.
Yes.
Have you ever seen? There's a whole documentary about the 1997.
Yes,
votes.
between Larry Walker and Jacques Villeneuve.
Yeah. So Larry Walker's bitter to this day that he didn't win the Canadian Athlete of the Year. He says he lost to a car. Right? He didn't lose to an athlete. He goes, I lost to a machine.
Right.
So that's one story, and I kind of agree with him on that. There's 2 amazing highlights of Walker's career that just show like what kind of guy he was, because he was very, very funny. He never took anything too seriously. Even when he got inducted into the Hall of Fame, he's just like, he's incredibly like laid back and just kind of like doesn't take his career as seriously as everybody else does. He
was wearing, the day he got inducted to the Hall of Fame and they called him, he was wearing a SpongeBob SquarePants shirt.
Exactly.
Who
That's
wears
Larry
that?
Walker. You know, there's that famous play where we're in Dodger Stadium. He's on the Expos, and he catches a fly ball in right field, and he thinks it's the 3rd out, and then he flips the ball to a fan in the front row.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, runners are tagging up because there was only one out, and then he tries to go back in the stands to get the ball back. But the best ever Larry Walker highlight is from the All-Star game. I obviously I don't know what year he was on the Expos. He got up to bat. Larry Walker's a left-handed batter. He got up to bat to face Randy Johnson, and Randy Johnson was like a left-handed batter against Randy Johnson. It's a scary situation, right? Like it's the ball's coming at you 100 miles per hour from basically four feet away because he's so freaking tall, you know, like he, so what does Larry Walker do? He gets up, he takes his helmet off, he flips it around backwards. He goes to the other side of the plate to bat right-handed because he's like, this is in the All-Star game. He's like, I'm not stepping in left-handed, you know?
And he struck out if I recall.
Of course, yeah. But he would have struck out the other way anyways.
Right. So I was asking, you were mentioning about how he lost the Lou Marsh Award to Jacques Villeneuve. So we have a mutual friend who is a big fan of both Jacques Villeneuve and Larry Walker. And when that documentary came out, I asked him, so what do you think? Who would you have voted for? You know, because you're a fan of both these guys. And he said he would have voted for Jacques Villeneuve because what Villeneuve did that year was international news, and what Larry Walker did was really only news in North America. That was Sean's reasoning. But I do agree with you.
And I understand, because when they're talking about that award, they are looking for the international aspect. But I mean, how many other Canadian players have won the MVP? We just listed them off. I mean, there have been since then, but at that point, I believe he's the first, Larry Walker. Because
he may have been, yes.
You know, we listed Freddie Freeman, Justin Morneau. These guys won after, but not until then. You know, so. By
the way, speaking of the Colorado Coors Field effect, Justin Morneau eventually ended up playing with Colorado, and he won his only batting title as a member of the Colorado Rockies.
Yeah, there you go. Well, people think that that the air there makes you hit more home runs, which it probably does. But we've seen like their stats over all the years. The batting averages are like also like way inflated at home versus on the road.
Because I think the fence is further back than in most stadiums, and so the outfielders have to play deeper, so you can get a lot of singles.
You can. So the honorable mentions that I had, you mentioned a couple of them, Josh. Joey Votto and Eric Gagne and Jason Bay. I mentioned Ferguson Jenkins before. Obviously, if you're making a list of the best Canadian ball players, he's there. But like you said, we never really saw him play. I remember seeing like the old Ferguson Jenkins in like 1981, you know, just hanging on with the Cubs maybe. And there's also Rich Harden. I don't know if you considered him.
Yeah, actually, Rich Harden and Ryan Dempster were my honorable mentions.
Mm-hmm. And what about Stubby Clapp?
I like his name, but I don't know that he was a very, productive player.
I think he played less than 50 games in the majors only. Like he barely made the majors.
And I think he played for Team Canada as well.
He always did. Whenever you saw Team Canada playing, like either in any type of version, it was always Stubby Clapp. So good list, Josh. I really love talking about baseball, and we love talking about Canada. So why not combine the topics?
Yeah, I tried to. My top four all have some sort of Montreal connection, so that's why I ranked them the way I did.
Very nice.
In fact, Jason Bay was drafted by the Expos, so you could say my top five all had a Montreal connection.
The Skip and Josh podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. If you listen to the show through Apple Podcasts, please leave a review. To interact with the show, send an email to skipandjoshshow@gmail.com. Follow the show on Twitter @skipandjosh, and go to facebook.com/skipandjosh to like the show page. To see links mentioned on today's episode, go to skipandjosh.com. And now for some final thoughts from the guys.
I'm guessing you haven't been watching the World Hockey Championships.
You guessed correct.
Right. So you know that I always watch these tournaments, the Spengler Cup in December and the World Hockey Championships in May. And maybe I'm the only one that watches. But just for your information, Canada is playing in the final, in a few minutes, actually, against Finland.
Who are we playing? Oh, okay.
And it's happening in Finland, actually. But The reason why you should have been watching, and maybe you should watch today, is because, they have one person that they send, to ice level to do the interviews with the players during intermission and after the game.
I know, it's my favorite.
It's your favorite, Lindsay Hamilton.
I know. I follow her on Instagram. I see what she's up to. She's posted everything. She's posted everything about like all her experience at the World Hockey Championships, and it looks like she's having a great time and doing good work as she usually does. So.
Yes. One other thing I wanted to mention to you, since I think you're not following baseball, when we were younger, there was always like the Saturday afternoon game of the week on NBC.
Of course, Joe Garagiola.
Right. So anyway, that went away many, many years ago.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know if you're aware. There's now a Sunday morning baseball game of the week every Sunday morning at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. And the first one was on NBC, and all the others are on Peacock. You must subscribe to the Peacock streaming service in order to get this game.
Which we are not able to do in Canada, by the way.
So anyway, that's just an FYI. The other thing that MLB is doing...
But how do they get an 11:30 start? That doesn't make any sense.
It's obviously not in the West Coast. It's a game that's on the Eastern time zone, and so they start like an hour and a half earlier than they normally would.
And what's the purpose of that start time? Just to make it stand out so people can stream it.
Correct. Yes, because for those like 2 hours, because the next game doesn't start till 1:30. So for those 2 hours, they have exclusivity, basically like what the NFL does with their Sunday morning game.
Yeah, there's no competition in terms of other sports viewing at that hour.
Correct.
There's also no one awake who's a fan, but
I'm always awake at that time. But
I know. I'm just saying.
The other thing that MLB is doing, and this I think you have heard of, is every Friday night they have the Friday night game of the week on Apple TV.
Yeah,
which again, you need that streaming service in order to get that game.
All the sports are doing everything they can to get some exclusivity in their broadcasts, right? Because these services are willing to pay for it. But it's the fans that suffer, right? Because eventually the fans are not going to subscribe to every possible thing. They're just not, right? So,
well, case in point, my dad, who watches every Blue Jays game, was not able to watch on Friday. And right. Luckily I told him in advance, because he would have logged on to try to watch and he wouldn't have found it. And he said, well, why can't I watch it? I said, because it's on somewhere that you can't get. That's basically, I didn't want to get into too much detail with him.
But for Canadian fans, like, we can't get Peacock. So, but you're talking about
I'm talking about the Apple
TV.
TV.
Yeah. No, the Apple, I tried it out on Apple to see what it was like, just to look at the broadcast, and it was fine. Josh, I want to ask you about This Is Us. How was the finale?
So I haven't watched the finale yet. Remember, I told you asked me if I was ready for the finale. I said, I'm going to record it. I don't know when I'm going to watch it. It's a busy time of year, with the NHL playoffs and baseball and all kinds of things happening and the nicer weather. So I'm outdoors more. And I actually haven't watched, and I went to a soccer game last night. So I actually haven't watched the season finale. So if you know anything about it, don't spoil it for me.
I don't know anything about it. All I know is that my TV had commercials for This Is Us every 45 seconds. That's all the commercials I saw. So I just assumed you watched it. Okay, so in next episode, I'll ask you about This Is Us, and hopefully by then you'll have watched it.
I will say that I watched the second to last episode already, and pretty much they tied everything up in that episode. So I'm not sure what they could have done in the last episode, but anyway, we'll see.
Well, it's a crying show, right? Like, it's a very emotional show, right? Like, they're trying to get to you. They're trying.
They're trying.
No, I don't have anything. I watched a lot of great shows. I haven't watched Ozark yet. We're going to definitely do some Ozark episodes. I think we're probably going to do an episode devoted to Ozark once we both watched the last 7 episodes, right? So
I'm very behind. I haven't seen any of Ozark. I haven't seen any of the most recent season of Better Call Saul. I'm very behind in my television viewing.
Oh, I came home from this trip that I had to Florida this week. All I had to do was catch up on all the shows. It was ridiculous. Like, this is what my life has become. I had to catch up. Survivor, they crowned the winner. I had all the season finale of my Chicago shows, which are on Wednesday. By the way, congratulations to Stella Kidd and Kelly Severide getting married. That was very, very nice. I wish them the best.
Who are they? Am I supposed to know those people?
They're television characters on Chicago Fire.
Oh, okay. I was like, am I supposed to know those things?
And that's it. So hopefully by next time I'll be able to ask you about This Is Us, and you can tell everybody what you thought about it.
Now, I will say I did see the season finale of The Goldbergs, which, interestingly enough, Jeff Garlin was in that episode. And again, I don't know how, but he was in it.
It's definitely old footage or stuff that was recorded already, because I
Right.
know for sure he's not on the set.
He didn't have any speaking lines.
Well, there you go. That's it. They're just, yeah. All right, so I'll talk to you. We'll do another episode in 2 weeks. Talk to you
Yeah.
then.
Have a great week.